Welcome back to Flashpoint. We now continue our conversation with one of the most powerful men in North Carolina right now, Speaker of the House, Tim Moore. Let's talk redistricting. We often talk about it here on this show. Perhaps one of the most understood, least sexy issues of our time, but so important. You know better than most how important it is. The GOP expected to draw up some new lines next year when it comes to the congressional districts, but we just came off an election in which court-drawn lines created a 7-7 split, Democrats and Republicans. Why is it a bad thing to have a 7-7 split in our House delegation in D.C.?
Well, I believe that the legislative districts should reflect the population of the state. And so what that means is because we don't elect candidates statewide for Congress or for the legislature for that matter. And so with the way districts are drawn by taking into account counties, by taking into account regions, as you do that, most of North Carolina tends to be more Republican leaning, even if the registration perhaps. Look, we won seats in the state house where and again, districts this time that were essentially drawn by Democrats. We won seats in the state house that we've never won before, and where the majority of the voters in those districts are Democrats, which means regardless of registration, those voters actually chose to vote Republican this year. And in your unaffiliated, it's broke that way. But there really is a pretty big distinction among the rural areas and in the urban areas and the suburban areas, as you guys have talked about on the show before. The voters, for example, in Cleveland County, where I am, just a few miles, I'm 25 minutes basically from the airport from Kings Mountain, right? Yeah. That close, right? I could probably get to the airport in Charlotte closer than some folks who are in South Charlotte.
You're borderline suburban at that point, yes.
It is, but that's a different voter than the voter in some of the in a lot of parts of Mecklenburg County. Well, what you see in terms of the elections is that you have a lot of red areas surrounding Mecklenburg, and Mecklenburg is very blue. But within Mecklenburg, there's some red areas as well. So, for example, on this thing, on the state house, in the new maps of the 12 seats in the House from Mecklenburg, we're only going to have one Republican representing Mecklenburg County. I think it would be healthy if there were more Republicans, for example, representing Mecklenburg. And so it's the urban and suburban areas. That's where your population center is, right? So when folks ask, well, why shouldn't it be a 7-7 or anything like that? Well, it's because when you draw based on population, which, by the way, the Constitution requires, because the urban and suburban areas are more densely packed with population, those districts tend to be extremely blue. You have districts there that are very Democratic. It's just the way it is with voters. I would submit if you were to try to draw a Republican congressional district in Durham and Orange counties, you're not going to have much luck doing that. Well, that's because of the makeup of voters in that area.
I would love to have you come on, talk another time specifically about this urban versus rural disconnect. I do want to talk about one or two other issues just real quickly. Abortion, given the Dobbs decision, given the results of this past week's election, how do you see the way Republicans have moved forward that honors your all's beliefs and also is politically savvy?
So I want to have a frank and consensus type conversation with a number of folks about how we address this. I think when you discuss issues such as abortion, you have to also talk about access to health care for women, access to health care for children, making the adoption process easier. And when a woman is facing this decision, she's probably facing one of the greatest, if not the greatest crisis of her life at that moment. And really helping try to look at it in a compassionate way to ensure that she has the resources should she decide to have a child. And in terms of determining at what point should something happen, that's a conversation that needs to happen. But I'll certainly want to make clear that I'm one of those who believes that when it comes to the exceptions of like rape, incest, and the life and health of the mother, we should always recognize those exceptions. So the key is how to balancing that to a certain point at which a child is clearly viable. And so all of that together is going to be put in. And so my pledge to you and to the viewers is we're going to do this in a way that makes sense. It's a tough issue, but I think if folks approach it with a common sense view and talking to one another and listening and not screaming at each other, we can do this in a great way that really is is comprehensive and is a way that is fair to all North Carolinians.
I've gone way over time, but two quick questions. I need two quick answers. The number one priority for the General Assembly next year, according to you?
The economy and workforce development. We need to make sure we have a ready supply of workers to take these new jobs that are coming to North Carolina, and we need to do what we can to make it so that it's affordable to live in this great state.
And there were rumblings this last year that you might run for a House seat for Congress. That didn't work out. What are your political ambitions going forward? You expect to stay there, the General Assembly, as the Speaker?
I do intend to serve another term as Speaker of the House here for these next 2 years, and I imagine I'll have my hands full working on that to worry about much else, because I'll tell you, we have a lot of work ahead of us, a lot of issues to deal with, but I'm just really thankful and appreciative that the voters of this great state chose to help us expand our numbers and allow us to continue moving North Carolina in a very positive direction.
All right, Speaker Moore, you are an important voice in our state and in our region, and we hope you come back here on Flashpoint real soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, more Flashpoint after this.